Hey, it's Scott Carlos at Stansberry Research. We're here at the 2018 Alliance Conference in Las Vegas. I'm here with Whitney Tilson, founder of Kase Learning. He's also the former founder of Kase Capital and a Wall Street legend. Whitney, it's a pleasure to be here with you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. I very much enjoyed your presentation you just did.
Thanks.
Certainly. So my first question, you said you used to be a value investor and a growth investor, but now that's changed. You said you're more of a make money investor.
Right.
Can you elaborate, please?
Right. Well, to be clear, I used to be an old school value investor, the opposite of a growth investor. I was the antithesis of growth. And what I've realized is through 20 years of the School of Hard Knocks, that to be a really effective investor, you got to be able to do both. You have to have both sets of tools in your toolkit. You need to care about valuation, yes, but you want to focus on owning quality companies, the great long-term compounders. So what I taught in my presentation just a moment ago was how to marry those two into what I call, I'm not a value investor or a growth investor, I'm now a make money investor.
One of the things you're talking about is when companies go through a fundamental change, and you really look, those are opportunities you're always on the lookout for.
Right.
One example I can really think of is Satya Nadella at Microsoft. And he came in, it had become kind of stagnant.
Yes.
And Ballmer left. He came
Yes.
in and he was like, we're really going to change, we're going after the cloud.
Yes.
Those are the type of situations you're talking about,
Yes.
correct?
So what I say, when I say marrying value and growth is you want to buy great growth companies, you just don't want to pay nosebleed prices. You want to not be overly focused on valuation, but you want to try and buy great companies when they're out of favor for some reason, right? And so typically when a new CEO is coming in, it's because the company's not performing poorly. So Microsoft is a great example. I think the stock's up 5x in the last 5 years under a new CEO. Go back 15 years to Jim Cantalupo coming into McDonald's, where the stock was down 75%. Go look at Starbucks back in 07, 08 when Howard Schultz came back. Stock was down 80%, and it's been something like a 17-bagger since then. So one major type of corporate event that can often unlock a lot of value is when a company's gone through some hard times, they bring in a turnaround specialist, and that person really delivers earnings growth returns. The stock goes back to trading at a more normal or higher multiple, so you get a win-win. Earnings are going up, and the multiple on those earnings is going up, and that's where you really get multi-bagger returns.
It's another thing you showed in your slides too is you do some really just boots on the ground type research that a lot of people don't always do. And one of the examples you were talking about CKE restaurants.
Yes. You
called a lot of Hardee's, and you talked to the management teams at the individual Hardee's.
Right.
And why do people not do that type of research?
Well, it's hard, it's very time consuming, and most people, they're running a portfolio of 20, 30 stocks, and they're just only so many hours in the day. And honestly, I made this mistake myself where I found that I got into trouble and lost money in investing was when I was just doing superficial research. I was reading the 10Ks and Qs, and I would listen to the conference call, but I didn't really get to know the business and didn't really do a deep dive and figure out what was really going on under the hood. And where I really made a lot of money is in situations where I did do that, developed some sort of insight that was not widely known to the market, and then was able to get into the stock and ride it for a long time and make many times my money.
Yeah, CKE wound up being a good return for you.
Yes, absolutely. They had these new thick burgers they were introducing in Hardee's, which was losing hideous amounts of money. It was sinking the company. The company was going to go bankrupt if they didn't somehow fix it. So they came up with these great new burgers that they had successfully rolled out at Carl's Jr., which is also part of that business. They rolled it out at Hardee's, and I was calling around the country and asking store managers, hey, how do those new thick burgers? What do customers think of them? And they were telling me customers were going nuts for these new burgers, but it wasn't in the stock yet. Wall Street had not yet picked up on it. Stock was, went from 3 to 21, I think.
That's incredible. And I feel like a lot of Wall Street analysts make the mistake of they will just call the corporate management teams, and the first thing the corporate management team is going to tell you is, man, our burger sales are incredible.
Right.
But the store
Right.
manager, he's going to tell you the truth.
Well, here it was interesting because the management was talking about and trying to sell, investors on this new thick burger story. But the problem is the management team didn't have much credibility because the company had been declining and declining, and every year they had some new product or program that was going to turn things around. So, after the 10th time, nobody believed the story, and so. But I was sort of fresh to the story and went out and started calling around and did that scuttlebutt research that gave me the conviction that this time the plan was going to work, and it did.
That's awesome. Would you say you find your shorts the same way?
Shorting's different. It appears superficially to be just the opposite of long investing. You look for terrible companies that are in decline and at a very high valuation. The same experience, though, holds true, where I just did superficial work and the stock just seemed overhyped and the valuation was super high, and I just got in on that basis. I uniformly got killed, particularly in a bull market. You're just going to get killed shorting valuation shorts. You need to find the same thing you need on the long side, where you're looking for an inflection point, where the business really turns up. On the short side, you have to do the same kind of research and find the downward inflection point. And when you find something like a Sears or a JCPenney or a Bed Bath & Beyond, they look cheap, the stocks look cheap, maybe you don't want to short them, but when the business fundamentals are declining so rapidly, the stocks just follow them all the way down. So it's a good lesson for long investors. Don't get sucked into those value traps. And in fact, for those who do shorting, which is a very treacherous business, I don't recommend it to most people, but if you're going to do it, you got to be right that the fundamentals of the company deteriorate. You can't just short based on valuation.
Yeah, I thought your Lumber Liquidators was an awesome example.
Yes, well, that was a case where I was sort of the catalyst for the earnings declining, in that I had some guy reached out to me in China who told me that the Chinese suppliers were sending Lumber Liquidators toxic formaldehyde-drenched laminate flooring. And so I helped expose that story and bring it to the attention of 60 Minutes, and they did the takedown. That was a beautiful situation.
I remember watching that. It was an incredible story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, what is the biggest mistake you see investors making?
Well, value investors, growth investors and value investors make almost opposite mistakes. So I would say value investors, the mistake is that they're just too focused on valuation, and this is something I was guilty of. Valuation matters, but I'd say it's 25% of what matters. 75% of what matters is how the company performs. And so because I had that reversed, I was 75% focused on valuation, only 25% focused on company quality and growth prospects. I got into a lot of crummy companies and sort of value traps, and I missed out on some of the great growth stories of all time. Growth investors, though, make the opposite mistake. They just pile into whatever story stock's coming along. They don't care about valuation. So one, they get blown up on the story stocks because there's no fundamentals at all. Right. And two, they pay such a high valuation, projecting that bakes in almost infinite growth for decades into the future, and very few companies achieve that. So they get blown up when the companies don't grow to infinity. Trees don't go to, no tree grows to the sky, but very few trees just grow and grow and grow, right? Yep. There's very powerful trends of reversion to the mean and so forth. So if you're going to be a growth investor, you got to be really, really right about the company fundamentals, and you also have to pay some attention to valuation.
Very interesting. And then lastly, again, your single most important piece of advice to investors would be do your own homework.
Focus on the fundamentals. Don't focus on the stock price. Don't focus on the sentiment around the stock and trying to pick tops or bottoms based on sentiment. Focus on the fundamentals of a company and try to be right about where those fundamentals go in the future, and that's the vast majority of the game.
That's awesome. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
Thanks, guys, and stay tuned for more updates.
If you're enjoying these videos, don't forget to press that like button. Comment down below, and if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe, please. And remember to click that bell to be sure you don't miss out on our newest updates. Stay tuned for more updates from our Vegas conference.